Wits University fees will rise by an average of 8% next year, but government will subsidise the increase for students with a family income below 600,000 Rand a year. At the same time, Vice-Chancellor Professor Habib has criticised the media for its coverage of the recent Fees Must Fall protest. Professor Habib is with us here on Morning News today this morning. Prof, good morning, and thanks for your time. A busy time, although it's the end of the year for you. Very quickly, have you managed to get any reaction so far, any reaction yet to the announcement of the fee increases?
We've heard our SRC was very clear that they were very unhappy with the fee increase. To be fair, they had suggested a 0% increase. We had looked at it at council level, which met on Friday. We deliberated on it, but we found that we're just not in a position. We'd love to do a 0%, but frankly, I've got to pay lights, I've got to pay water, I've got to pay salaries. We've got to pay all of these costs. And in this context, there is no way that we can go with the 0%. At best, what we can do is go with the recommendation of the Department of Higher Education and Training, which was go with 8% and anybody below 600,000 family income that they will pay. So effectively for those people below a 600,000, it's a 0% increase. Anybody above that will have to pay an 8%. And that's the best that we can do under the circumstances. Yes, we are in long-term negotiations with students about rethinking the financing of the system. And that we would be happy to do. But for now, we still got to pay lights, water, etc. in January, and that's the context of the decision.
So this could change at some point next year, depending on what happens with those negotiations, also depending on what happens with the Fees Commission itself.
Absolutely. We would hope that actually in our engagements that we're having negotiations with the Fees Commission, that we would re-look at completely refinancing the system. And we are not dependent on fees. And in that context, university vice-chancellors and university executives would be far more happier not having to do these increases. These create an enormous unhappiness, both within the students, but within the broader university community. But at the moment, my hands are tied. We have to pay a whole series of costs in January. And in that context, if I didn't do that, I'd be in violation of my fiduciary responsibility.
Well, like you say, some students still not happy, despite the fact that some will not be paying at all. It will be a 0% increase. No, not be paying, but a 0% increase. The SRC just look.
I would imagine that that's the majority of our students. Just remember that I suspect, we haven't got the numbers and we're now collecting data on this, but I suspect that the majority of our students would be in that category.
Of 0% increase.
Of 0%.
Well, just looking at some reports this morning also, the SRC seeming to question the timing of this announcement, saying that, also saying they're shocked by it, first of all, like you said, and then saying that this announcement was made when most students are not on campus, not giving the Fees Must Fall movement time to regroup, kind of making it seem like you're a bit sneaky about it.
No, this is the question. We had postponed the decision partly because we were in the middle of student protests. We were not allowed to do engagement with the SRC. We had to wait for the exams. The final council meeting happened on Friday, which is the 2nd of December. If I don't announce, that means I'm going to issue a fee increase in January when people start registering without having announced a fee increase. That would be untenable. This is the last time I can, and the only time I can announce a fee increase is when the council makes a decision. And the council only made a decision on Friday because that was its final decision.
So various rocks and various hard places for you there. Just looking at also other reflections and other articles about this morning, some saying that this is a time bomb, a fees time bomb. Are you foreseeing that come January, or whenever it is that students do start getting back to campus, that you are going to have trouble with this?
So look, at the moment, I am worried about this. This is a time bomb. But the question is, what do you want vice-chancellors and higher education executives to do? We've got to pay bills. We have to pay lights and water and salaries, etc. Either the state says, don't increase, we'll cover it. And then we'll do it like we did last year. Or the state says, increase, but we'll pay for everybody around up to 600,000. We followed effectively the recommendation of the Department of Higher Education and Training. Now, people have to be fair to the universities. And what do you expect us to do? If we don't increase the fees and we go into a financial crunch in March, April, what happens then?
How will you handle this come the start of next year?
Well, we are talking to the students. We hope that the students understand the context we're in. We are making a series of other measures that we're putting into place. So, for instance, we normally have a first payment where you actually a registration fee or a first payment that you make. In Wits's case, what we've looked at is a possibility that if you can't do the first payment, you can apply for a waiver. We will put those kinds of measures in place so that we give people the time to find a way to find the resources.
And in the event of protests and the scenes that we saw towards the end of this year, how will you handle that? The same way that it was handled at the time?
Look, there's things we have to learn, but what we have to be very clear about, violence is not allowed under any conditions. The law is clear on this thing. You can't say, I'm going to burn something, but you can't bring in police. I don't want to bring in police. I don't want to bring in private security. But you cannot be violent, and you cannot be. As long as your protests are constitutionally valid, I will not interfere.
Will police and security be there come the opening week?
Well, we haven't made those arrangements yet. We are currently looking at security protocols for January. There will definitely be security in place, but it would depend on what the scale of the protests are, what form are the protests, are they constitutional, are they violent? If they are violent, then I'm sorry, the police, it's their responsibility to be there. This is public property after all.
You've been reflecting on this year's feast protests, and one of the bugbears for you was the role of the media and how the media covered this, Prof. I mean, just give us a quick idea of what was the problem with how the media...
Well, I think that there's lots of problems around it. Firstly, I think in the mainstream media, frankly, what I'm astonished at is how facts are not verified, how people don't understand the issues. The media has two roles. One is to provide information, and one is to provide detailed investigative analysis. On detailed information, they're often with serious problems. I saw protests on the University of Cape Town and Stellenbosch, but the footage of Wits University on television. How is it that you can cover another university in UKZN and put Wits's footage there? I had to write to all of the editors and said, this is illegal. You are misrepresenting issues. But there were no detailed analysis of causes and options. And I saw that in the mainstream press. In some of the online was even worse. You know, I mentioned the Daily Vox. Yes. I said the facts were not verified. Some of the journalists were on 1 minute activists in the Fees Must Fall movement. The next minute they're writing about the article. They don't verify issues. They pass it as citizen journalism, but they pass prejudice and opinion rather than research.
What impact did this have on what you were trying to do to resolve the situation?
Well, we were trying to get a conversation going for people to understand the set of circumstances. I would imagine that it is the job of the journalistic world, the media, to enable conversation, to reflect that these are the issues and these are the various positions. That was not happening. The media was caught on spectacle. The better the spectacle, the better the drama, the more the headlines.
Would you say the media made it worse for you?
I think the media, I don't look, it was difficult. But I don't think that the media responsibly reported on the issues that they should have. They didn't fulfill their own mandate, which is in their own craft, which is to provide good information, unbiased information, and to do good analysis.
But you yourself were given a lot of opportunity to respond, given a chance to comment as well, when students spoke out against.
I am not questioning that. I'm not questioning that Adam Habib and my colleagues, Tawana Coupe
and your colleagues at other universities.
all had access to the media. What I am questioning is, explain to me, how does a broadcasting house show a protest on UKZN and have footage of Wits? How is it last week on eNCA that you did a story on unemployment and covered the Statistician General, 54%, but the footage was on Wits University protest? Tell me, how does unemployment speak to footage of Wits University protest? What is it that is happening in editors' minds when they do that kind of irresponsible depiction? That's the question that I'm asking. And I think there needs to be some self-internalization. Yes, you'll have a plurality of views in the media. I accept that. I don't expect you to be on our side. What I do expect you to do is to be responsible in information, and you can't be embedded journalists. That's the problem in some of the, not in your case, but in one of the other cases I mentioned.
So going forward, what is the suggestion from you, and what would you like to see happen?
I would like to see two things. I would like to see, firstly, you do fair information. here are the issues, these are the issues that are causing the conflict, this is what the one side is saying, this is what the other. If you want to do good analytical stuff, I'd like you to do on how the causes emerge. What is the cause of the price increases? What are the options to find the solutions? Bring in the experts that are saying, here are the different options to fix the problem. That is a responsible engagement on this thing. What media have been doing over the last couple of months and years is frankly what I call the spectacle. They're covering the spectacle. That's what you're chasing. That is not a responsible engagement on the issues.
Well, in all fairness, Professor Habib, and having been here in the morning and done the interviews, I mean, I think my colleagues and I can safely say we try to get various role players. We've spoken to Sharona Patel almost every morning, I think, during the time of those protests as well. And in terms of the spectacle, we have a responsibility to motorists who are passing by, people who are taking their kids to school with those protests. A lot of that also serves to be warnings for the wider public and not just the...
Then explain to me, how is it coverage of UKZN has Wits footage on it?
Yeah, I can't explain that part of it, but I think when it comes to technicality, sometimes mistakes are made. There are mistakes that are made, certain footage gets in the way. I wouldn't imagine that it was deliberate. I wouldn't imagine that, but I cannot explain for that time. But why were these concerns not raised at the time?
So we did write to all of the editors, and we did say that. Here's the problem I think that has happened. So let's be honest, part of the problem is the juniorization of the journalistic cohort. Is you don't want to spend money. You don't want to send a camera crew to the University of Limpopo. So it's easier to put this thing. It saves money. That's what's in part behind this. So let's be honest. And it seems to me that I think we need to open up those conversations. If you are having those financial burdens, then look at a way to more responsibly reflect those. But what you can't do is because you're lazy to send a camera crew to Limpopo, that you then cover this in a different way.
But we have sent a crew to Limpopo. I mean, we have had footage from there. I'm not sure if you're basing this on one piece that you've seen or one day's coverage maybe, or constant.
Ask the students in any of those universities and they will tell you. When there are protests in poor universities around this country, there's very little coverage. When there's protests at Wits University and Cape Town, there's an enormous amount of coverage. There is a very high level of inequality in the way you're even covering the institutions themselves.
I understand your concerns, and like I said, I'm not sure if it was based on one day, if it was based on a week's coverage, or what is it that you saw a roundup. But given the bigger picture now, and I think editors might come to you and say, yes, we may have had a blip, we may have had a bit of overlay that went over the wrong university, it must have leaked into that story, and then the words and the pictures didn't match at the time. But what they will ask you, what does this have to do with the plight of students at the moment? What does it have to do at the end of the day with what students are asking and what is being provided?
So that's what I would like. I mean, it seems to be the responsibility of journalism is to say students are struggling. In that context, we need to find solutions. The purpose of journalism is not only to provide information, is to start looking at saying, here are the options. I haven't seen any substantive documentary coming out from South African broadcasting houses on here's what the problem is, here's how it emerged, here are the potential solutions. I haven't seen. I've seen it on other issues. I've seen it on the dramas in the ANC. I've seen it on the dramas on the economy. I've seen it on the ratings issues. But I've not seen it, a nuanced investigative reporting on where the situation is with regards to universities. Why do we find in our dilemma?
From students' side as to why they can't afford this?
You can do it from all sides. Do it from student sides about why they can't afford it. Ask the vice chancellors why they're doing. Are they being irresponsible in the fee increases? Speak to government about what the strategic options are. Speak to the experts that are looking at that.
Habib, I think we could talk all morning about the role of the media and what impact this has had on it. But at the end of the day, when students are coming, and you're going to have them in January saying, we are not paying this, we are not going to do this. What are you going to do? Remind us again of the plan.
We have a registration process. The registration process will kick on from early January. We do have a fee increase. It's my responsibility. I can't just increase a fee without telling people. We have done it as per the council decision because we have no other option. If anybody else, if the state believes that it should be 0%, then simply tell us that you will underwrite it and this 8% will go away. It will disappear. And effectively, and then in January, we will have to manage the protests, if there are any. We will try to do so in a way. I hope those protests are peaceful and constitutional. If they're not, we will have to deploy private security, and it is the responsibility of the police, if there's violence, for them to be there to protect public property.
Will you give the assurance then that students will not be handled in the way that they had been in some instances during the...
So firstly, if you want, I can't give any assurances. It depends who you're talking about. Our private security at Wits University, at least, we're not involved in manhandling students in any particular way. Where there were queries, we investigated those. And there's been queries, we've got them with badges, so that their names are identified. With police, I do not have control over the police. The police is the responsibility of the generals in the police service. You've got to engage them, etc. I must say, bar the few incidents that they're there, we would not have survived. We would not have been able to finish this academic year had the police not played the role that they did and come and protect public property.
But Prophet, also, we saw footage of students, of stones being thrown back at students, during those protests as well.
It was horrendous. As soon as that was done, it was investigated, people were actually dealt with, and they were removed. So those cases where people have behaved inappropriately, we've reacted very, very quickly. As I said, I demand of everybody else to play within the framework of the Constitution. I will make sure that Wits University also plays within the framework of the Constitution.
But what does it say about our institutions when we do have to have private security and police outside the lecture rooms, walking around the campus?
It's a terrible state of affairs. But ask yourself, would you rather have those institutions burn? Wits University finished the degrees, the examinations of 36,000 universities. There were people who were saying, no free education, no education at all. Would you have preferred that I not have I do not have that exam and close down the campus and sacrifice the lives of 37,000 students? That would be a violation of my responsibility. Of course I don't want police. Of course I don't want private security. But then either we have to resolve this issue sustainably by government, or we have to effectively find a way where the protest does not turn violent.
And students might argue that their freedom of movement is being sacrificed.
I have publicly said on eNCA with student leaders, make a public commitment, no to violence and no to arson. And I promise you I'll withdraw the police.
So their protest can carry on in a peaceful way.
In a peaceful way. I've made that public statement on Judge for Yourself. I said, give me the commitments and say that if somebody breaks that rule, they are immediately summarily suspended from the campus. Agree to that, and we will start withdrawing.
So you say you're in ongoing negotiations, the fee situation, the increase depends on what happens in those negotiations. Where are you now?
So there's two sets of negotiations happening. There's an ongoing system-wide negotiations happening, which is how do we fix the system so that we don't have this problem year on year on year. And that initiative is led by Judge JOHANNESBURG. He's engaging on that, and we'll have to see where that leads to. There's a second set of institutional negotiations. These are about institutional issues. We're currently about talking to our SRC on those kinds of issues. So there's two very different negotiations that are currently underway.
All right, well, we wish you and the students all the luck, Professor Habib, and may you at least get a bit of a break this December. Professor Adam Habib, Vice Chancellor at Wits University, with us this morning.